And I show it's 6:30. So I'll open the Wenham Town Board of Selectmen meeting for 15 December 2020 Zoom meeting. First order of business, we'll check and see. Jackie's running the behind the scenes computer stuff. So do we have anybody in the waiting room that would like to speak?
And this is just a reminder, if you wanted to participate in public input, to just put your name in the chat box.
Yeah, Lou Randazzo's on if you have any questions about what you're going to consider later on in the meeting.
All right. Let's reference the cell tower, right, Lou?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, there's no one in the chat at this time.
Very well. Then let's move on to announcements. All right, I'll read through these. Hopefully some people attended the Zoom meeting last night with the Wenham Board of Health. Very interesting and good information there, but here's the announcements. COVID-19 testing. The towns of Hamilton and Wenham have partnered with Beauport Ambulance Services to offer COVID-19 drive-up testing. This is for Hamilton and Wenham residents who are symptomatic or have had close contacts with a COVID-19 positive individuals. This includes Hamilton Wenham Regional School District students and staff. And this runs through the month of December. Pre-registration is not necessary for the drive-up testing in the parking lots at the Miles River Middle School. That's at 686 Bay Road, right next to the high school. And it runs from 8:30 to 4:30 on the following days. Tomorrow, Wednesday, December 16th, Saturday, December 19th, Sunday, December 20th, Wednesday, December 23rd, and the one date, Monday, December 28th, after Christmas. Please do not arrive on the site prior to 8:30 to help reduce traffic with the schools there, and visit the town website for more information, including answers to frequently asked questions, or call 978-468-5520, extension, I believe that's 4 there. So remember, you need to pre-register. You do not need to pre-register for this. It's just drive-up testing. Next slide, please. Hey, Wreaths Across America is scheduled for this Saturday, December 19th at the Main Street Cemetery. Wreath distribution has been divided into 2 sessions, 12 p.m. and 1 p.m., with half the wreaths being distributed among veterans' graves at each session. Very important, attendees must register in advance via the link at the wenham.gov/wreaths. Face coverings will be required. Registered volunteers will be checked in at the entrance to the cemetery for contact tracing, and additional instructions for attendees will be provided in an email on behalf of the Veterans Committee by Friday. So sign up hopefully tonight, tomorrow, or Thursday, because we need to distribute over 500 wreaths to all the veterans' graves in the cemeteries. So a very about. Next one, please. Okay, the town administrator search comments. The board has hired Community Paradigm Associates to assist with the search for the next town administrator. So what we have set up is, thanks to Nikki, a PA search at wenhamma.gov site where all residents, employees, and elsewise can send in emails. And what we'd like to hear is what you would think the best or your perfect town administrator should have as characteristics, expertise, and so forth. So get those in. The formal process of selecting the next town administrator is starting off, so let's get those comments in. Thank you. Okay, and on to board and committee openings. So halfway through the year, we still have quite a few openings that we need to get filled. One opening on Conservation Commission, one on Council on Aging, 2 on the Hamilton Wenham Community Access and Media, 3 on the Hamilton Wenham Cultural Council, 1 on the Iron Rail Commission, 2 on Open Space and Recreation Committee, 7 Town Administrator Screening Committee, and we just spoke about that, and that committee will run through March 31st, 2021. So short-term commitment, probably just 4 meetings to help with the resume reading and screening the candidates. So not a heavy load. So I'd like to see some people turn out for that. Then we have openings for the Town Government Study Committee. And tonight we'll be filling openings on the Wenham Human Rights Committee, hopefully. And most important, as we had talked before, on the Zoning Board of Appeals, we still need 3 associate members. If a permanent member misses a meeting, then we need to have an associate there to step in, because for any given issue, the members have to be present at all those meetings. All right, so send the resumes in. You can do that right on the website or send them direct to Nikki at Town Hall. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I might add a couple of comments.
Yes.
Okay, for those listening and paying attention, we really need people to fill these positions. Most of them are not a heavy lift. They're a way to acclimate to your community and contribute, well to the community. We need you. The ZBA, for example, it's best if you do have some particular skills such as architectural or engineering, but if you don't, if you've got common sense on most of these positions, that's what we're looking for, and you care about your community. So please don't hesitate to call any of us or talk to Town Hall, Town Administrator, and find out what the responsibilities are, but most of them are not a heavy lift. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Certainly on the town website, you can track down the committee chairman for any of these and send them an email and get a good feel for just what the commitment is. All right, thank you. Hey, reports, town administrators up first. Tom, what do you have for us?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to thank the residents of the town of Wenham. I've been here 2 weeks and it's been an incredibly enjoyable experience. Learning about you and learning about your community and working with the boards and commissions and a fine team at Town Hall. So I just want to thank everyone who may be watching this evening, who I've spoke with. I may have not run into you personally, but I've been dealing a lot with everybody on Zoom at meetings and board meetings. And I just want to thank you very much for the warm welcome here. And I'm enjoying myself here and hope you get a town administrator full-time in a short process, but I've been enjoying it. So maybe don't go so fast. It's been fun up here so far. Enjoyed it. Next, I want to say some things we're working on, and I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, you saying something?
Go ahead.
Okay. One is our goal-setting process, which I'm looking forward to putting eventually on our website. We've had maybe approximately 25, 26 goals that were set back in 2019. And I'm going to be putting updates to the board and to the public, hopefully every 2 weeks on everything. This includes everything from projects, planning, legal, operational, personnel. A lot of these have been done in the past year, so I can be able to put them up and say they're closed. But we will be crossing that sets in the next 2 weeks. We've been working on budgets. It's been taking a lot of time, but we've been doing this and keeping this as an ongoing item on our website to show the fine work that our team's doing here, and you can be aware of what has been adopted at town meeting and the steps and where we are on all those projects. Speaking of budget, today at the State House, the House and Senate Ways and Means Committees had their consensus revenue budget hearing with the governor's staff. And we hope to be hearing coming out of there what they may be agreeing upon, what revenues the state may feel that they're getting in during the budget process. As we know, the governor sends his budget in on January 27th. At that point, we'll have an idea of what local aid, at least on the governor's end, will be promoting for the town of Wenham. As you know, our town is not a large local aid community, but it'll be interesting to see what we receive and how we can plug that into the budget. Next, minor item, but I want to thank our assistant, Nikki. Here we had a meeting with our insurance broker, Maya, to go through an update for the general governments and towns insurance. And we're looking forward to seeing what we can do on that for any savings or improving the coverage that we may need here at this, on our town. One thing right now, the main thing that the town may be looking at is tomorrow night and into Thursday, our snow. Spoke with our Public Works Director, and he's expecting, and he's not a meteorologist, so don't hold him to this. Okay, we don't want to have Bill blamed. But our weather service is projecting 6 to 10 inches in Wenham, but it could change. Some of the stations are calling 8 to 12 because it does look like it's moving further north than what we're hoping of, having it hit the southern New England. Our equipment is all set, but as usual, you never know what happens based on how the type of snow comes in, whether it's soft or whether it's wet and heavy. But we'll be here, and if you have any questions, please feel free to call our offices and our Public Works. Next, we have a personnel update. And as first, I want to wish our library assistant director, Mr. Pondelli, who is leaving us after a number of years of service, and that we have that position open and it's posted internally, and we'll make determination how our library director does the hiring, the interview process and such. But we wish Mr. Pondelli the best, and I'm sure we'll have a fine candidate moving into his position. And last I have is, and I wish to thank our Director of Administrative Services and our Public Works Director and our Public Safety people working for this particular week on the Longfellow Road project. Right now, we had placed barriers up on the site because it became dangerous as far as the turn there. And we think safety of the residents who drive up in the area is important. So the barriers were in place today for where they were doing work. And we just wish that you use your judgment when driving through that area and be very careful. The barriers are protection, but please take care when you're driving up there, especially evening when since this work is being done. So I thank you, Mr. Chairman, and wish to pass the reports on to you.
All right. Thank you, Tom. So we're off to a good start with Tom here. We're picking up a lot of initiatives you'll see going forward here. And, as we go into budget season, we'll continue to provide reports to the public as to how this year's going and how the budget's going. A particular note is this Thursday evening, the 2 boards of selectmen, the 2 finance committees, and the school committee in a 5-way event. So you may want to tune in Thursday. John, Selectman, do you have any other reports to add?
I actually do. I thank you for asking, Mr. Chairman. I would like to give a big shout out to Melissa Elmer, who is the director of the community house, and her wonderful staff of ladies who put on the Santa in the Park event for 4 different days. And 2 of those days had to be reshuffled because we had such bad weather a week ago. But the children just had a wonderful, wonderful time. They got to meet Mrs. Claus and Santa Claus, and everybody was distant and masked. And my daughter came all the way up from Medford with her husband and her 2 girls. And it was just a wonderful time. She had, just on Saturday alone, 60 families. And she originally thought it might be a fundraiser. She said, no, you know what? This is for the children. So it was just a wonderful, wonderful event, and everybody had a great time. So I want to commend the community house one more time for performing beyond the call of duty. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to the community house as well. I also note driving around that I think people have been stuck in their homes so long that a lot of the holiday decorations going up. So the town's looking pretty nice.
That's right.
All right. On to consent agenda. All right, I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the consent agenda, including the following. Open session meeting minutes from October 27th, November 5th, joint with Hamilton Board of Selectmen and Hamilton Finance Committee and Wenham Finance Committee on November 9th, November 17th, November 19th, November 24th, joint meeting with Hamilton Wenham Regional School Committee on December 2nd. So these were all rolled over from last meeting, and I'd like to hear if I have a second as far as the open session minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I would second your motion. I've had some time to review them, and I didn't find any issues.
Very well then. No further comments, then we'll take a vote to accept the open session minutes. John?
I second the motion, sir.
All right. And the vote. So John?
Aye.
And Gary, aye. So open sessions are accepted and released. Now, the executive session minutes of October 6th and November 17th, 2020, part 2, which are to be released. Have you reviewed those okay, John?
Yes. Yes.
Very well then. Do I hear a second for the release of those two?
Second, I'll second your motion, sir.
Right, and the roll call vote, John?
Aye.
Gary, aye. So the executive session minutes for October 6th and November 17th, session 2 are released. And finally, executive session meeting minutes of October 13th, 20th, 27th, 3rd, 10th, 17th, session 1, and November 20th, all of which will be accepted and withheld at this time. Do I hear a second?
I will second that motion, sir.
Very well. The roll call vote.
John, aye.
Gary, aye. And that completes the consent agenda for this evening. Okay, a new business, tax classification rate hearing. Steve's online here, our principal assessor. Is that correct?
Yeah, he's somewhere.
Yes, hi. I would like to ask our chairperson, Lisa Craig, to call our assessors meeting to order.
All right, so Lisa, welcome as well, and all the committee members, and why don't you proceed with your opening of the meeting?
You there, Lisa? Unmute.
Oops, there we go. I think I got it now.
Nice.
Okay. Yes, so this is my first run at a tax classification hearing. So I'm supposed to be starting the process. Is that what's being said?
You're calling the meeting to order.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order.
And Lisa, just to make sure, who's your quorum? Who else is on?
I believe Steve Ozahowski, and it should be John Bucco.
John, you there?
Yes.
All right.
Great. Tom, I spoke with Mr. Tanis. He's having some computer difficulties. He is hopefully watching on TV, and he will call me if he has any comments that he wishes to add.
Very well. The floor is yours, Steve.
Very simply, I actually had, in years past, we've relied on Mr. Wilhelm, who has been on the Board of Assessors for a number of years previously, and he makes short order of this process, which I happen to say, I have to say, I find commendable because this is a formality. And it is to confirm that the town of Wenham approves of having one tax rate. There are other options that are available to municipalities, none of which makes sense for the town of Wenham for reasons that we have gone over in years past. And if anybody wishes more detail on the subject, feel free to either call or email me, and I will happily, well, maybe not happily, but I will go through. I will go through the reasons why. The fact is that Wenham is the primary housing stock in Wenham is single-family residential that is owner-occupied, and it does not make sense for any other of the options to be taken advantage of. They would not make sense for the town. And similarly, I serve in Hamilton on the Board of Assessors. We also have in Hamilton a classification of 1, which is, again, it's standard for almost every small town in the region. And before I forget, that does remind me, I wanted to underscore Mr. Clemenzi's call for people to serve in town positions. I've done so for over 20 years in Hamilton, and I have found it to be nothing but rewarding. It is a great way to get involved in your community, and to say there is no limited heavy lifting is an understatement. For many of the positions, you can participate or not participate at a various level, and it is it's really worthwhile. And the fact is, it is how democracy really functions at the local level. So please fill in at these positions, volunteer. Hey, if you don't like it, you can always quit, right? So, but give it a shot. So anyway, having said all that, I would like to say that I would recommend that the Board of Assessors and the the Board of Selectmen
Thank you.
adopt the classification of a tax factor of 1 for the fiscal year of 21.
All right.
Mr. Oznowski, I do have a question for you. John Clemenzi here. You said that you deal with Hamilton the same way, yet they have a much larger commercial setting than the town of Wenham. I'm a little bit surprised that they haven't gone to at least a 2 level because, I do a lot of, my business has been run in Beverly for years, and they have commercial and industrial, as you know.
Yes.
And boy, I'll tell you, there's a lot of difference in the tax rates.
Correct.
But Hamilton, you're saying is the same as Wenham then?
That is correct. John, what we found in Hamilton is that if we literally doubled
Yep.
the tax rate for the commercial properties in Hamilton, savings to the average homeowner in Hamilton would be pennies.
Okay. So in other words, the square footage of property and building is very small then.
It is. It's a
Even though it
shopping
looks,
center.
when you drive through, you see all these businesses. And
I know it's a booming metropolis. Yes. It is.
All right, then.
But I thank you. I also thank you for commenting on the volunteerism, because the heavy lift is usually done by paid employees. We have town clerks and so many other paid positions. But what we're looking for here on these different boards and committees and commissions are people who would like to spend some time giving back to their community for all that the community gives to them. And my parents were folks that did a lot of this themselves growing up, as I said, in Beverly. And Wenham is every bit in need of good, qualified people who just care about their community.
Right.
It's not a hard job.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. All right. So, Jackie, do we have any one with a hand up in the chat room that'd like to put any comment in on the matter?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, you were breaking up. What were you asking?
Yes. Do you have anybody in the chat room that wants to speak to the this motion?
I'm going to defer to Nikki on that because she is monitoring the chat tonight while I'm sharing slides. But
Right.
if there's none, I will.
I don't see anybody in the chat at this
Right.
point.
All right. Thank you, Nikki. Then let's go ahead. And here's the motion. Move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 56, to adopt a tax factor of 1 for the town of Wenham for fiscal year 2021. This being the same as many previous years. Do I hear a second?
I will second your motion, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And the roll call vote.
Something has suddenly gone wrong with my computer, and I'm getting a message that says my speaker's not working.
I'm not
Can
hearing
you
you.
guys hear me at all?
So Gary
Steve.
votes aye. John?
Steve, oh, I'm going to mute you, okay? Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. John, I.
Gary, aye. That motion passed. All right.
Thank you.
Next order of business. Okay, appointments. We're gonna start with the Hamilton Wenham Cultural Council. This Judith H. Kubrisky. This appointment follows the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 10, Section 58, for local and regional cultural council establishment with an equal number of members for 3-year terms. The procedures outlined in 962 CMR, Massachusetts Cultural Council for local and regional cultural councils, state that each member community must have at least one member. Hamilton currently has 5 appointed members and Wenham has 2 appointed members, leaving 3, one which we are going to fill this evening. So I know Judith has been a long-term volunteer in the town, and I would make the motion to move that the Board of Selectmen appoint Judith H. Kubrisky to the Hamilton Wenham Cultural Council for a 3-year term through June 30th, 2023. Do I hear a second?
I am pleased to recommend a second to your motion, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Roll call vote. John?
Aye.
Gary, aye. And congratulations to Judith Kubrisky, the most recent member of the Hamilton Wenham Cultural Council.
And thank you so much.
All right, tonight we have several appointments to the new Human Rights Committee. As folks may remember, through this past summer, there is a groundswell of interest and energy that occurred. Then through this fall, working with the Coalition for Human Rights in the 2 towns, we have come up with a Wenham Human Rights Committee formally adopting the charge on November 17th, 2020. The town administrator will be serving ex officio for this committee, and otherwise it'll consist of 7 members. The chief of police or a Wenham police officer designated by the chief of police, and then 6 at-large community members. The 6 members who are resident of the town shall be appointed initially as follows and thereafter for terms of 3 years. 2 until June 30th, 2021, 2 until June 30th, 2022, and 2 members until June 30th, 2023. So the first one I'll recommend is I move that the Board of Selectmen appoint Janet Burrett to the Wenham Human Rights Committee for a 3-year term through June 30th, 2023. Slightly out of order, but I want to give kudos to Janet for being the very first Wenham citizen to volunteer for this committee, and she's expressed an interest and certainly has the background. So I'll ask for a second or any comments, John, for this.
I will both second it and comment that Judy is a very class act woman to deal with, and I'm so glad that she's taken the active roles that she has.
Right, thank you. So the first motion's made, seconded, and roll call vote. John?
Aye.
Gary, aye. So welcome Janet Bird to the very first slot on the new Human Rights Committee. Next up is Martha Brennan, also very well qualified, long-term participant in town, Girl Scouts, food projects, NAACP. So I believe she'll be a very good person to join this committee as well. Do I hear a second?
I will second that and also commend her for joining on with this.
Right. So I move that the Board of Selectmen appoint Martha Brennan to the Wenham Human Rights Committee for a 3-year term through June 30th, 2023. Do I hear a second?
I'll second your motion.
And the roll call vote. John?
Aye.
Gary, aye. Welcome Martha Brennan to the committee. Next up is Tova Crystal, and I'd like to welcome Tova, very well qualified, extensive resume from college days of participation in human rights and related activities, and especially I'd like to welcome the fact that a new generation joining the committee, and I'd like to see the younger folks that join the committee here. So I'll move that the Board of Selectmen appoint Tova R. Crystal to the Wenham Human Rights Committee for a 2-year term through June 30th, 2022. Do I hear a second?
I will second your motion, and I will commend her for joining on, because as Wind Dodge taught me in mountaineering, the young legs are who carry you through tomorrow.
All right,
So-
very good.
It's
So,
great.
motion and a second and roll call vote. John?
Aye.
Gary, aye. Next on the list is I recommend Jeremy A. Gross for Board of Selectmen appointment to the Human Rights Commission for a 2-year term through June 30th, 2022. Also well qualified. Do I hear a second, John?
I will second that motion.
All right, and roll call vote. John?
Aye.
Gary, aye.
And thank you so much, Mr. Gross.
And as we work down through the years, let me just say that, remember, these are not distinguishable jobs between these different slots, but I would anticipate that as we want a continued rotation on this board, that some of these people will not only serve their 2 years or 1 year, but might just go on to another 3 years thereafter.
Yeah,
To
good.
especially welcome Samuel S.
Yeah, didn't.
Berg, an extensive background in clinical psychology, dealing with drug addiction and other matters that really impact human rights in our country. So I will move that the Board of Selectmen appoint Samuel S. Norberg to the Wenham Human Rights Committee for a 1-year term through June 30th, 2021. Do I hear a second?
I will second that motion, and those assets are very, very good to have.
Thank you. And the roll call vote. John?
Aye.
Gary, aye. And thank you, Sam Norberg. And the 6th position, I'd like to recommend Patricia K. Purdy to for the Board of Selectmen to appoint to the Wenham Human Rights Committee for a 1-year term through June 30th, 2021. Do I hear a second?
I will second your motion, Mr. Chairman.
All right, and as many people know, Patricia has an extensive volunteer service record with the community and has worked with the WISH and other social services committees. So a very good selection here.
And for those who don't know or don't remember, she ran a very wonderful bookstore for the children for many, many years.
Yes. Do I hear a second, John?
I will second it.
And the roll call vote. John?
Aye, sir.
Gary, aye. And there is your 6 new members to the new Wenham Human Rights Committee. Their first order of business will be hopefully before the end of the year or first thing in the new year, have their first meeting, establish a chairman, and work through the committee charge that's already printed. Thank you. Next order of business, Jackie. All right. Class 2 used car dealer license renewals. Each year we have to renew the dealer license for Burnett's Garage, Fallon's Auto Service, and Freeman's Garage. So a lot of paperwork worked on this.
Yes, sir.
That, I'll say up front that last year, apparently, there was some question about the fingerprinting and so forth, that I'll say that because of the demands of the COVID pandemic and so forth, that that review was completed, but the review of whether we really need that each year is sort of incomplete. So that's something that Tom's got on his list to do a deeper dive into. So this year's we're going the one way that we decided to remain with the fingerprints in place, and we'll readdress that. So Jackie, I believe we have Burnett's Garage up first. Is that correct?
Yes, we do. And I believe he's ready to go on Zoom.
Yep.
He is here.
Yes.
Great.
Good evening. Welcome.
Hi.
So
Is this your first Zoom meeting?
Yes.
all right.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
We'll all stumble around together.
So the requirements, Burnett's Garage, we have completed the application and of course the fee, completed the Corey acknowledgement form. We've completed the proof of insurance for vehicles, provided the proof of property tax payments, provided the copy of the flammable permit issued by the Wenham Fire Department, provided the proof of the $25,000 bond, and fingerprints must be submitted to the Wenham Police Department with 7 days of application checked off. So the yearly process has been gone through. I know the police and the fire have gone out there and to look at Burnett's garage, and everything was well in order. Anything to add there?
I just have a question. How many years have you been in business as Burnett's Garage, if I might ask?
It'll be 75 years next year.
Wow, so long before me.
All right, so a big anniversary coming up. Any comments you want to add?
Nope, we're good. We're trying to keep things clean. And
Right. And I know, like all businesses in town, we're complying with all the COVID precautions as well.
yep.
I'll move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the annual renewal of the Class 2 license for Burnett's Garage Incorporated, 60 Maple Street, Wenham, for calendar year 2021. Do I hear a second?
It is my pleasure to second your motion, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And roll call vote. John?
Aye, sir.
Gary? Aye. And that motion is passed, and Burnett's Garage now has a Class 2 license for the upcoming year. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
I survived my Zoom.
All right.
Yeah, it wasn't that difficult, was it?
No.
I know you have Nikki down there to help you a little bit.
Yes.
You got the best.
All right.
Next,
Yeah.
Jeff.
Right.
Thanks.
Okay, next up is Fallon's Auto Service Incorporated, also a long-term business in town. Coming up, yes. So can we go back to that slide with the requirements? Okay, so Fallon's Auto Service has completed all 8 requirements here. The application, the Corey acknowledgement, the workers' compensation, proof of insurance, proof of property tax payments, copy of the flammable permit from the Wenham Fire Department, proof of $25,000 bond, and the fingerprint with the Wenham Police, and inspections complete. So, Fallon, any comments?
No.
Right? Then I'll go with the motion that I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the annual renewal of the Class 2 license for Fallon's Auto Service Incorporated, 233 Main Street, Wenham, Mass. For the calendar year 2021. Do I hear a second?
With pride, I would second the motion and ask Mr. Fallon the same question I did Mr. Burnett. How many years, John, have you been in business there?
32.
You guys have been around a while.
Yeah, I'm the young one at 32 years. I think Freeman's got us all beat, but been around for a long time.
Great. Well, thank you for being good vendors in town.
Well,
All right.
thank you.
Do we have a second on that, John?
Yeah. Yes. Second.
Right, and a roll call vote.
Aye.
Gary, aye. So the motion for the Board of Selectmen to approve the annual renewal of the Class 2 license for Fallon's Garage for the year 2021 passes, and congratulations, Mr. Fallon. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next, Class 2 used car dealer license renewal for Freeman's Garage. Good evening. I've
Good
got
evening.
another slide coming up here in a minute.
Oh, there we go.
Very good. So for Freeman's Garage, I see that the requirements for the application and renewal fee, the Corey acknowledgement form, the proof of insurance for vehicles, the proof of property tax payments, and the proof of $25,000 bond, and the fingerprint are required within 7 days is checked off on the form. So I see all those requirements are completed. I do need to mention that the town has received a letter that concerns the state of the property there as far as other material being in the backyard there. So I believe that's more of a zoning thing that we can take care of on the side at the later meeting or directly, Mr. Freeman. But otherwise, I'll move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the annual renewal of the Class 2 license for Freeman's Garage, 34 Arbor Street, Wenham, Mass. For the calendar year 2021. Do I hear a second?
I will second the motion, and if Mr. Freeman would tell me how many years he has been or his business has been there.
I'm looking forward to year number 83 next year.
Oh, my God. Yeah, you beat us all.
Yep, since 1938, Father.
All right,
That's great. Congratulations. So I second the motion.
thank you. Roll call vote. John?
Aye, sir.
Gary, aye. And Mr. Freeman will take up the other matters of letters of concern outside of on its the regular process otherwise. But as far as the actual license, it's been moved, seconded, and voted. So congratulations. And you can move on to your 83rd or 84th year here. Thank you.
83rd year.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, on to annual liquor license renewals. First one up for Grassy Roots LLC on Main Street.
Gary, she was joining from her own Zoom. Jenny, if you telephone
Hi.
and you're on, there you are.
Right.
Thank you.
Hi,
There
everyone.
she is.
Very good. All right. So the question of the day is, how long has Grassy Roots been in business?
Hello.
Yes, we have you.
Okay.
How long has Grassy Roots been in business, please?
13 years.
13 years. All right.
Longer than I would have remembered.
Jenny,
Right? It doesn't seem like that long.
Well, I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you.
Jackie, do we have the motion slide then? All right. So for Grassy Roots, for the public at large, there's 9 long and fairly complex requirements for the annual renewal, including money orders, the citizenship, tips, certification of cleanliness, most common victual license application, fingerprints, signed certificate of compliance with workers' compensation, and so forth down the line. So I see from the Wenham Town Hall staff that all 9 of those are completed. So I'll go ahead and proceed with the motion. I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the annual renewal of the retail license for wine and malt alcohol beverages and common victualler license for calendar year 2021 for Grassy Roots LLC, DBA Grassy Roots, 152 Main Street, Wenham, Mass. Jenny Gramis, manager. Do I hear a second?
I will second that motion, and I want to say to Jenny that she makes the best town hall panini.
You
Oh,
love
dear.
those. You
I
love
do.
those.
When I come in, they know exactly what I'm looking for.
Exactly.
But all of your food is so wonderful, honest and God.
Thank you.
I just
Thank
wish I
you.
could get there more often. So thank you for being in town, and I second that
Thank you
motion.
so much.
Motion second, roll call vote. John?
Aye, sir.
Gary, aye. So the retail license is presented to Grassy Roots LLC. Thank you for joining us.
Congratulations.
All right. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Yes,
Yeah,
Have
we
a good
appreciate
night.
you. Take care.
All right. Good night.
good night. Annual liquor license renewal for 97 Market Incorporated.
Oh, that's right.
From Jackie's spreadsheet here, that 97 Market Incorporated DBA Richdale's has complied with all the requirements as
Yep.
necessary for the license. Any comments before we read the motion, John, or applicant?
No, it's turned out to be a very good opportunity for him for his business to have taken this additional product line on. And I was a little dubious the first year he came in for a liquor license, but he's proven to be a very competent manager.
Thank you. All right. Then I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the annual renewal of the retail license for the sale of wine and malt alcohol beverages for calendar year 2021 for 97 Market Incorporated, 143 Topsfield Road, Wenham, Mass. Albert Abdo-Malik as manager. Any second?
I will second that motion, sir.
And the roll call vote. John?
Aye.
Gary, aye. And that motion is passed, and congratulations to 97 Market for another year as a retail license of alcohol beverages. Approved.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yes.
Keep
Have a
going. Keep
Yeah.
good luck and keep going.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you
All right, on to new business. Iron Rail Cell Tower Review, potential vote to award RFP and enter contract negotiations. So I know Jackie has been working this hard, and Lou Mendoza from the Iron Rail Commission, I believe, is on with us first. So Lou, do you want to speak to this first, and then Jackie follow up?
Yeah, I think I'll let Jackie handle it. She did a lot of work and a lot of great work. So I think she can handle it, but I'll be available to answer any questions.
Very good. Jackie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Lou, for that. It's very kind. So tonight, we're going to go over a couple of details on the Iron Rail Cell Tower project. So we've just recently completed the RFP, which is the request for proposals process. So tonight, we're looking to finalize the vendor that the town is going to be moving forward with. We're not at the stage yet where we're looking at the aesthetics, looking at the design. We're just at the stage where we are looking to vet the bidders. So I'm going to walk quickly through that process that we've already gone through to date. So we issued the request for proposals to try to find the most advantageous bidder. And tonight's discussion will focus on selecting that bidder as from the two finalists to enter into a contract with. This is just to select the bidder, not the design. Both of these finalists had to meet minimum eligibility criteria when submitting their proposals. Our bid tabulation team included members of the Iron Rail Commission, Margaret Hoffman, our planning coordinator, Sherry LeBlanc, our treasurer collector, Bill Tyak, our director of public works, Vicky Missoni, who is the joint energy manager for Hamilton and Wenham, and myself. We looked at 4 criteria when selecting a bidder. We looked at their experience with cellular technology installation and maintenance in Massachusetts. We looked at the thoroughness of the proposed methodology or approach to the project. We looked at proposers who, and if they had a demonstrated ability to complete the project on a timely basis. And then lastly, we looked at the cost effectiveness of the proposal. So all of the reviewers on that bid tabulation team had to make a judgment for all 4 of these criteria, either not advantageous, advantageous, highly advantageous, or not applicable. So the bid tabulation committee reviewed the confidential proposals, and the Iron Rail Commission did meet last Thursday and heard a report on the bid tabulation and made a recommendation. Both finalists were considered responsive and reasonable and responsible in their proposals, but one bidder was more highly advantageous than the other in 3 out of the 4 categories that we looked at, and that was Cellco Partnership, doing business as Verizon Wireless. So as I said, this is just to select the entity that the town will be moving forward with. So if this is just for the procurement of that piece. So if the Board of Selectmen desired to, they could vote to award the RFP to this bidder and to enter contract negotiations with the awardee, which is where a lot of the aesthetic decisions and some of the more detailed nuances of the contract will start to be worked out. Town staff would begin working on a lease agreement based on the base RFP and on other municipal cell tower lease agreements. And then town staff would provide a draft lease agreement and other options to the BOS at your meetings in January, where you would start to more thoroughly vet designs and other contract specifics. And then for those interested from there, once the BOS finalize a lease agreement and a design, the cell tower would go through the planning board process outlined by our zoning bylaw, and that will include a public hearing, an abutters notification, and site plan review. And then eventually we'll have a special permit issued, construction work permitted, and then work would begin on the cell tower. Granted, we're talking months at this point. That's kind of where we are. At some point, we may come back to the select board and to the FinCom for a reserve fund transfer or RFT for some minor funds to do a wetland survey, but we'll know it more in January once we begin contract negotiations on that. So I'm sorry for being fast. I know you have a lot to discuss tonight, but I'm happy to take questions or answer anything that wasn't helpful in the packet.
Don, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I've got a lot of questions. First of all, who are the vendors that were solicited, and where is the document for that search? And what source was used to find these vendors? And how come you've only got one vendor at this point left?
So the way this piece works under we had to follow mass procurement law. So we put together the RFP, which the select board approved earlier this year, which is the request for the proposal. It had minimum standards that municipalities need for procurements of this nature. And it also, we looked at, cell tower agreements from municipalities across the Commonwealth to have a good model. And the request for proposals was also reviewed by KP Law, as well as we had Nikki work with Maya, our insurance company, to ensure that any minimum standards from our general liability provider would be met by the request for proposals. So this was a very comprehensive document, which the select board approved. So all finalists had to meet the minimum criteria laid out in that proposal as the first piece of the process. So this was advertised through multiple means. We have minimum newspaper requirements. We have to post with a network that the state requires us to do, that all of the vendors of this type of larger scale work for municipalities are all put in a central location for all of the different types of vendors who do this type of work to review, so that those that are in the business of doing this can go and look at what municipalities are looking for services. So when both of the proposals were received, they were reviewed for those minimum eligibility items that the town had set forth in the RFP. And the town also set forth in that RFP that the select board approved those 4 criteria that I discussed a moment ago. Let me pull them back up. The experience with cellular technology installation and maintenance, the thoroughness of the methodology, the demonstrated ability to complete projects, and the cost effectiveness of the price proposal. So the 9 people on the bid tabulation team reviewed the confidential proposals that we received. That's a part of mass procurement, is that those proposals remain confidential to a certain point during this process, which we're still in. And so out of all of our iron rail commissioners all reviewed the proposals and weighed in, as well as those staff I mentioned earlier, and looking at their references, looking at their prior projects, looking at the schedule and the timeline that they provided, looking at the cost effectiveness of what they were offering for, an initial proposal for the leasing amount. All of the tabulators reviewed these 4 criteria, either, not advantageous, advantageous, highly advantageous, or not applicable at all. So that way, when we got the confidential results back, we could tabulate who kind of came out. So both bidders that came in, both finalists, were good. They had advantageous work, but one was much more highly advantageous than the other in 3 out of 4 categories. So the finalists that are being recommended by the Iron Rail Commission met 3 out of 4 criteria of being highly advantageous rather than just advantageous. So that's where tonight we're bringing to you, hopefully, to award the proposal to that bidder. And that way the select board can enter contract negotiations with that bidder and discuss, what would be making up our lease agreement, what would be the design of the system. So we have certain variables for the select board to work through, but there are some minimum variables that we needed a bidder to be able to provide to the town in terms of liability insurance and things like that, and bonding that we met through the RFP. And then we looked at these 4 criteria to say, okay, one of these bidders could be considered more advantageous based on, for example, their experience. Highly advantageous is a bidder who's done many projects of this nature in Massachusetts and seen a successful completion of these projects. Whereas a less advantageous or even a not advantageous bidder might have been someone who's done few, if any, of these projects in Massachusetts. So that's what the vetting process was looking at as we went through. Does that answer your question, John?
Well, I've got a lot more questions and I need more time on all of this. You're telling me that with all of the potential, I don't know this field, so, I'm very ignorant on all this. And I'm very concerned about trying to make a decision tonight. I can tell you clear up, I'm not prepared to make a decision tonight. But of all the vendors, there were only 2 respondents. That's it?
Well, there's not a huge market, John, for vendors of this nature. You know, a decade
How
ago.
many are there? Can you tell me how many there are?
Yes. So, well, there are smaller companies that work with the bigger companies, but there's all the cell providers that you might think of when you know, watch the television and you see the ads. But in terms of people who are actively building in Massachusetts, the boom of when people were building these more frequently was about a decade ago. So we were actually very pleased to get 2 different vendors for this, because there's not a lot of people doing this work right now for the size of the tower that we're looking at doing. Most folks are scaling back to small scale wireless that are on top of existing light poles. And I know Margaret Hoffman is here tonight and she attends a lot of webinars on this topic as well, but there are not a lot of people in this business the way there were a decade ago. So there's limited people who are in the business of physically building the tower. There are a lot of carriers that at some point we would look to have them join on to our tower. But in terms of companies constructing the physical tower, which is what we're looking to do with this lease agreement, is to end. Tonight, we're looking to have you vote to enter contract negotiations with one of these construction companies who go through the permitting process, who do the construction, and then go out and find the carriers to put their technology onto the tower.
So a T-Mobile is somebody that provides service, not the mechanics, you're telling me.
And so I will say with this one bidder that we found to be the more highly advantageous, they are a known carrier name as well, but they're a big enough company where they have a construction real estate leg who are doing the leasing and the building of the towers, and then they have their carrier equipment getting put onto the tower. But not all carriers run the same way. So we had 2 companies who are in the real estate and construction side of building towers who felt that it was advantageous for them to put in this proposal to the town to increase service in the location where we're looking to increase service.
So you're saying the Verizon is one of the 2. Who is the other one again?
It was a smaller company called Connected Infrastructure.
And you were not unable to find, I mean, for example, Comcast, they don't do any of this?
If they do, they didn't find it advantageous to put in. I'm not aware that they're in the business of building the towers, though. Margaret's on here too. She can maybe speak if she's met with them. But there are typically 2 or 3 companies in Massachusetts that do this. So we were happy to have 2 finalists put in. It's not a very competitive market, John, in terms of the people who are physically building the towers. The more competitive market is in the people who are placing their cellular technology on the tower, if that makes sense.
Well, yes, it does to some degree make sense. They're what I call suppliers of technology, not the mechanics of a tower to transmit or receive or transmit. This is interesting. Okay, Mr. Chair, I would also like to make it clear that we're missing one of our members this evening, and I feel very void not having input from our 3rd member. So I'm a little hesitant to want to make a decision on this tonight without our 3rd member available.
All right. Well, I think, the process went through to the state procurement basis that I don't see that we're going to get any better result, that it's been very well vetted through the selection committee and Iron Rail. And so obviously a 1-to-1 vote requires us to postpone this. So the decision, but I would ask that you submit any additional questions you have through
Yes.
town administrator so we can get this cleared up, because certainly, time's passing on this. As Jackie said, it's a market that is slowly disappearing. So this is probably the tail end of the tower building business. So let's
Fully agreed and very supportive of it, because I was in on the ground floor with the initial concept and trying to find a site has been very, very difficult for us. So
Right.
we've now found a site that we think could be a very viable site without too many hindrances. So yes, I want to see this happen as quickly as possible.
All right.
I will talk to the town administrator a little bit further, because I had a brief conversation with him the other day, and it sounded like he needed to get up to speed a little bit too. So, no, I will not hesitate, and I will come up with some questions and follow through.
Mr. Chairman, if I may add one other piece.
Go ahead, Jackie.
I just do want to clarify, John, I'm really not intending to be cagey with you with certain details, but the thing that I do want to impress upon you so that the public knows as well is that this RFP process is a mass procurement process. So we have certain confidentiality with the proposals that we do need to maintain until the select board award one of the bidders with the RFP and enter into contract negotiations. So when that occurs, there is some more additional public ability for those proposals. But for us to be able to do business with any bidders like this in future, we have to show that we can keep what we're legally required to keep confidential in their proposals, confidential moving forward. So I do apologize. I'm not trying to be cagey.
No.
I'm trying to walk the
You
line
don't-
of information.
Jackie, I
maintain that.
have the highest confidence in your honorability. I've participated in mass bidding years ago, but I know how confidential it is. And I was working on pennies when I did bids against some very, very large vendors. And I actually took the bid, and I knew how quiet it was until everything was opened and everything was done and the decision was made, and then it was awarded. So I understand the process, and I'm not trying to be difficult, but this is an arena that I'm not familiar with. And I think I just need a little bit more time and questions to get there.
All right.
I think that too, John, was just for public edification because it is an unfamiliar process for us. So it's the only reason why I added it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jackie. And thank you so much for your work. I can tell you've really done a lot of work. I've done projects similar to this, and I got to tell you, I spent 6 months on one of them, and it was quite an endeavor.
All right, John, then let's,
you.
we'll roll this to the very next board
Yes.
meeting. And in the meantime, if you'll work with Jeff and Tom,
Yep,
resolve any outstanding questions you have.
absolutely. Yes, I will. Thank you, Jackie.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, next item of new business is the discussion and vote not to exercise the option to purchase 62 Maple Street. Is, Margaret or Tom, are you going to speak to this, or is Margaret on?
I can speak to it, but I think Margaret's there too.
Tom, do you want to address the select?
You can address what you need to on the history. I can do any of the technical aspect because I came into this at the tail end, so.
Sure. You may remember that the property at 62 Maple Street is the site of the Maple Woods property, and they have sent in a notice of intent to sell the property, and the selectmen, the town has the right of first refusal. So this is their letter of intent, and the selectmen are now asked to decide whether they would like to purchase the property or not. That's pretty much it. Andrew DeFranza is here.
Oh, good. That's great. Thank you.
Yep. Andrew is part of it for Harbor Light.
All right. Well, I think
Andrew, speak to us.
so. For the public at large, this is in one sense a formality, as people know the development of 62 Maple Street as a housing area has been going on for years now. So,
Yeah, well, 5.
Yes. So at this point, it's a purchase agreement is being reached, but one formality is that, as it was in Chapter 61, that the town first has to give its pass up on its right to a purchase. So the town has never had any interest in this property, has always endorsed and supported the development as the large housing complex. And so Harbor Light, do we have someone to speak to that quickly?
Sure, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Yes, Andrew, there you are.
Is that okay?
Yes.
This is Andrew DeFranza from Harbor Light. It's nice to see everybody again.
Absolutely, our pleasure.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's been going on a while. I think, as you said, Mr. Chairman, we had held this property for quite a number of years on an option agreement while we were going through it, but that does not trigger 61. So after the town very kindly approved the CPC funds at town meeting recently and the housing trust funds, again, a big thank you to all the residents. And we agreed to submit now the project to the state for funding, which is where most of the funding comes in. We knew we were going to have to move from the option agreement to the purchase and sale agreement. And so we did that very recently. Good news is that the project was affirmed by the state to move from the first phase of the funding round to the second phase. So we'll submit the full application at the end of January. And so we decided to go ahead and do this technical process now so that we could represent to the state, if you decide to so vote, that this technical item has been tied off. So happy to answer any other questions people have, but it's been a while. We've been at it a while.
Yes.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's been at least 5 years. I do have just one question of clarification for the general public who may be listening. I hope they are. First I'll make the point that at town meeting, the town meeting overwhelmingly supported this project to happen. My question is, for the public's sake, because I think I've followed the process well, is that we, the Board of Selectmen or the town of Wenham, are being asked to pass on right of first refusal, which we have with a chapter property, which this is. And that opens the opportunity for your company, your firm, Harbor Light, to then purchase it and develop. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Wow, I get it right.
Very good. Very good, John. All right.
All right, I'm done.
All right.
I'm pleased that you're here with
Right.
us.
Thank you.
I'll make the motion, move not to exercise the option to purchase the property at 60 Maple Street as set forth in Mass General Law, Chapter 61, Section 8, waiving the right of first refusal. Do I hear a second?
I will second that motion, Mr. Chairman, with great pleasure, because this is one of the most important projects for the town of Wenham we could be responsible for.
Definitely. It'll bring a very much needed housing for the categories to the town.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Had the second roll call vote. John?
Aye.
Gary, aye. So the motion passes. Thank you, Andrew. And I think you're one more step closer to completion.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it very much.
Yeah, as long as your grandchildren may be able to move into it someday.
They might. Happy holidays.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
same to you.
All right, next up is the discussion and potential vote to execute a letter of intent for negotiation with Select Energy Direct LLC for solar energy purchase agreement and a site lease at the Hamilton Wenham Regional Library. I believe is Vicky on?
I'm here, yes.
All right. So Vicky, how about telling us about this great green project for the roof at the library, and that includes the gym as well, correct?
It does, yes. Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for having me. This project is another one that's been in the works for a while, not 5 years, but maybe 1 year. I gave a little background in a cover memo that's in your packet, but Hamilton actually funded a study to review solar potential for the rooftops on their municipal buildings. And it was funded through a state renewable energy grant. And one of the buildings they looked at was the library and the rec center. And that proved to be, at the end of the day, the best building to put solar on. So at the advice of the solar consultant that we used, we started talks with Select Energy, who is a preferred vendor through Power Options. Power Options is a municipal nonprofit consortium that Wenham already belongs to. They do things like competitive energy supply procurement and other things for cities and towns. So this vendor has already been selected by them through a formal RFP process, similar to what Jackie described earlier. So it takes the onus off of the town from doing their own RFP process. So we could kind of subscribe to Power Options' existing relationship with Select. That's kind of the idea. So we met with Select. They did some preliminary designs for us, which I've presented. And what we're asking tonight is for the town, along with Hamilton, to enter into a letter of intent, sign a letter of intent with Select, which is basically saying that we will exclusively work with them to develop this project. So it's not a contract yet. It's not a lease yet. It's just an agreement that we'll exclusively work with them. The roof at the building has to be replaced, and that's on the capital calendar for the next year to 2 years. So the solar would be after that. And the timeline of Select's project works. They understand that we're doing the roof, and so their timeline works with our roof replacement timeline. And there's lots of metrics about savings and production of the system and et cetera, which I'm happy to answer questions on or talk about. However detailed you guys want to get tonight is fine.
John, you had questions first?
I have lots of them.
All right.
Vicky, thank you for doing this. I personally oversaw a multi-million-dollar solar project on a flat roof. And I got to tell you, it's the preparation, like every other project, that's the most important part of it. We've got to have a solid base for a roof structure that's adequate to support the panels. And then how are they installed? Because roof penetration is the greatest demise of every roof. And then thirdly, if there is a new roof on there, how do these, who takes care of the roof after the 25-year lifespan of the roof material?
Sure. So there's no penetrations for these solar installations. There's
How
no
are they
roof
secured?
penetration.
How are they secured?
They're ballasted.
They are, okay.
Yeah.
That's the roofs are my favorite subject. Go ahead.
We would never install a new roof and then put penetrations through it. We just would not do that.
No kidding. I've seen a lot of things happen in the world.
Yep. No, that's a good
Go ahead.
question though.
Yeah.
So that's your first question.
Yeah.
I guess the 20-year life. So the term of the solar contract would be like 20 years. So you get to the end of the 20 years and they'll come and take it off, or the town can opt to buy it from them. Actually, the town can buy it from, there's checkpoints within those 20 years that the town can buy the system if they want. And that's all predetermined in the contract, what the buyout price is.
So this is a 25-year agreement?
I think it's a
20-year agreement.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the agreement is between Wenham, Hamilton, and whatever this company is you just mentioned?
Yep. Yeah. So ultimately, I mean, that's what we would get to ultimately, but it's a power purchase agreement, which is the way that the Hamilton landfill solar is structured.
A land project is much different than a roof project. But
yeah.
Go ahead.
That one took like 5 years. This one hopefully won't take that long.
Well, that's another subject over there altogether. I get that.
So this company would own and operate the array, and they would sell everything it produced to the town for a fixed rate over 20 years. And the idea is the rate is below retail, so your savings is the difference between the rate they're selling you and the rate that you would otherwise buy the power from National Grid.
All right, let me back up then. So Wenham, Hamilton are not doing this solar project. They're renting the roof space for the project to exist. Is that correct?
It's leasing it. Yep. So there's a lease agreement.
Yep. That's the more current way of doing it in application for contractors to do it. You got to be very, very careful because there's a lot of ifs, ands, and buts in it. Who's responsible for the waste afterwards? What if there's damage? I mean, this is not a simple contract, in my opinion.
Mhm.
It took me 6 months to figure it all out, and I got all the way up to the governor, the attorney for the governor at the time, to make sure I really knew what I was doing. I mean, this is a great concept. I really support solar projects. So they will own the fixtures and they will maintain the roof. Is that correct?
They own and maintain the solar array and all like the inverters and all the equipment associated
Yep,
with the solar
yep.
array. And they also get the
Yep.
tax credits. I mean, that's how the whole thing works. We can't get the
Yep.
tax credits because
Yep,
we're a public.
I'm familiar with the tax credits
Okay,
too.
yeah. So
And they
that's the
vary.
reason we're doing it this way. People will say, well, why doesn't the town just buy it themselves and get all the savings? But it's actually not as economical that way. And we
No,
did that analysis.
Years ago, that was
Right.
the way to go.
Right.
Today, you're better off doing what I believe you are attempting to do here, because the market has changed so much. The recs have been flip-flopped all over the place, and it's sort of like going to the gambling hall. You got to figure out, okay, when are they good, and what are they good for, and how much money can you get? How much power will this project generate?
So they're estimating it will generate, well, it's 150 kilowatt hours a year,
Yep.
which is 80% of the library's energy use.
Oh, so it will supply 80% of the building structure that it's on.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
yeah.
Okay.
But we're buying that. I mean, that's not free power. We'll have to buy it. You understand that?
Yes, yeah, I know.
So it's not like free.
As I said, it took me
Maybe.
6 months to go through it detail by detail by detail by detail. And that's when there was a lot of money in it. Today, it's a very different story. And renting the space out as you're proposing, you don't get as much money, but you don't have as much liability either. Okay.
Right. When it comes time to negotiate the lease and
Yeah.
put things like these details, I think those would go, I know that those would go into the lease negotiations, and that's a pretty long drawn out process.
And who is this company again?
They're called Select
Select.
Energy Development.
Where are they located?
You know, I don't know where their home office is. Let's see.
But Vicky, you said they are the designated contractor for these type of municipal operations.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, through Power Options, which Wenham belongs to, and you guys actually buy your electricity, your municipal electricity through Power Options. So Power Options just used to do competitive energy supply for cities and towns, but they're branching out and they have this solar leg now. And
Wow, everybody keeps diversifying.
they did their own RFP process. I mean, we did an RFP in Hamilton to do the landfill, and
Yes.
it was costly and it took a long time. And especially as a small town, it's a big endeavor.
Yeah.
Go and search for your own firm.
I get it. Yeah. I know everything's becoming so much more difficult to try to deal with, because the big used to be the way to go, and now you're lucky to find anybody to pay attention to you on any of these type of projects. So I give you a lot of credit for pulling this all together. I know the enormous amount of work and study you have to do to make sure you understand what it is you're getting into. Okay. All right.
Vicky,
Yes.
Solex Massachusetts office is out of Hopkinton.
Okay. Thank you.
So Vicky, so essentially, this is just the letter of intent stage, knowing that this will have to be integrated with the capital planning in both Hamilton and Wenham, hopefully this year going forward with the roof. So I read through the whole proposal. Certainly, it provides a lot of cost savings to the town over the lifespan, and also increases our green footprint as well. So I'm strongly in favor of this. And John, do you have any further questions at this time?
Just one more, if I can remember what I was coming up with? Bonding. How large a dollar value is this project?
I don't know the dollar value.
That's critically important because it's what threw us into a real frenzy because the company that we really wanted to do the project could not get bonding for $1.5 million. So I think you need to know that, and then do they have bondability to assure us that they don't get halfway through the project and then we're stuck
John,
with.
certainly this Select Energy has done this multiple times throughout the Commonwealth already. Is that correct, Vicki?
Yeah, I mean, they have a huge portfolio of projects that they've done. I mean, they've been doing this for a long time. It's not typical at this point to talk about what the project is cost to build. So I don't think they're withholding that from us.
Yeah.
And I think in their portfolio, this is a relatively small piece of it. I mean, they do some really big projects.
Yeah, again, I don't have any way to put it in perspective. So without a dollar value, it's really hard to, go along with it. My bigger concern is the fact that there's a means to hold their feet to the fire. Just like any developer, if we don't have a means to hold their feet to the fire, then the contractor goes belly up and we're stuck with a project that's half baked. And that would be a very bad thing.
Right. But all that would come in the later phase of contract negotiations, right, Vicki? All we need tonight is the letter of intent to proceed.
Correct.
Right.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Tom.
Oh, thank you. All those protections go forth within the contract as we negotiated. So when the board reviews and approves the final contract, all those areas will be highlighted to the board.
Okay.
To protect the community.
Okay. All right. I'll go along with it.
All right. So is there a motion up there, Jackie? All right. I move to execute the proposed letter of intent signifying the town's intent to enter into good faith negotiations to execute a power purchase agreement and site lease agreement with Select Energy Direct LLC for the purpose of a solar array at Hamilton Wenham Regional Library. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that motion, Mr. Chairman.
And roll call vote. John?
Aye.
Gary, aye, and that passes. So thank you, Vicki, for your work to date. And we know that there's quite a bit more to go forward. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, thank you so much, Vicky.
You're welcome.
That's great. It's a good move. My parents would be proud of you because they were big in solar.
All right, tonight, item I here, beginning discussion on management information structure. So over the last few months, we've looked at the flow of information up to the Board of Selectmen. And there's a point paper there, John, I hope you got a chance to read, that I think we need to provide more visibility to some of the department heads, especially as we go through the budget season and approach town meetings, so that the public at large understands all the accomplishments and achievements of the departments. And also, I think there's specific information that the board should be receiving on a periodic basis. Certainly at the start of the pandemic, we got some of that as each employee working from home gave us an update on almost day-to-day operations, which probably overload. But certainly as we saw this past summer, that going forward, we probably need a monthly update from the finance director as to expenditures and the outlook on capital spending, that I would expect that we could introduce a rotational basis of police department, fire department, council on aging and so forth, to come in perhaps once a month and give us a status update as to exactly what's going on in their department, where the funds are being expended, and most importantly, to highlight the achievements of the EMT setup or police actions or council on aging, so forth. So this is just the start of a discussion here. You got the point paper, And I think all it really does is kind of adjust what the Board of Selectmen package looks like as it comes up to us. Over to you, John.
Oh, thank you. Boy, I'll tell you, I've been a very, very, very strong proponent to do exactly what you've just described. We need better communication. And I think particularly with this COVID issue, it's caused everybody to just cloister in corners. And I give the department heads a lot of credit because I think it was my request, they started producing those biweekly or monthly documents to describe what everybody was doing because everybody was working remotely and so on and so forth. And we had no idea who was working or not working, where they were, what they were doing, or how they were responding to residents and needs of the town and so forth. So I think this is great. I think if we can have a report, did you say once a month?
Well, I think we'll have to decide, certainly some departments have more ongoing business than others. So
Yes.
perhaps, we'll let Tom work on this to determine, who's on a monthly basis. Certainly, perhaps, COVID has been at almost every meeting being an emergency. Going forward, perhaps, fire and police might be monthly. Others, I certainly would like to hear about facilities and tree warden and so forth, at least quarterly, coming up to a town meeting or through the budget season. So I would suggest that we hand this over to Tom to kind of flesh out a new Board of Selectmen packet and information flow back and forth between the board and the town administrator.
Absolutely. And I would ask, is the school department included into this?
Well, I think this is focused mostly on the flow coming out of our departments up to the Board of Selectmen. And then going over to the school committee, I know that the school committee has established a member of the school committee to be a liaison to the Board of Selectmen. And we could reciprocate likewise to one of the three selectmen to become a so-called more expert in the ongoing school matters as well.
Well, if I might, Mr. Chair, I strongly recommend that we get a reporting process from a school committee, I guess, or the superintendent, maybe that's better, at least once a quarter. So we have some idea of what's going on with 50% of our budget. I mean, to me, it's uncanny not to have a reporting process for that large a portion of our operation.
All right, then that's certainly something that we should bring up a Thursday at the five-way meeting.
Okay.
With committee direct. So why don't you plan to speak to that?
Absolutely. Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Tom.
Yes, this is more historical nature for me for our relationship with the school committees in the past. And I apologize, I haven't had the opportunity yet to meet up with the superintendent. But generally I've had in the past, if you're talking about communication, previously the chair and myself, the chair of the Board of Selectmen, Select Board, myself, would meet monthly with the chair of the school committee and the superintendent on the board level. But also I generally would meet almost every 2 weeks with the superintendent. I mean, I know I'm here on a temporary basis, but it's a good thing to try to get started to improve that communication and looking at ways that possibly there could be even further operation work that could be worked between the department, between general government and the school department. But I intend to try to reach out to the superintendent either by the end of this week or early next week to set up a meeting with the two of us, and then possibly how we want to develop it between the board and the school committee.
Sounds good. So we'll work on that going forward, John, that set up a more formal, or I should say more regular contact between the school committee and town government to look at budgets and so forth, especially going through this very tight year ahead. And,
Yeah, I mean, if we have some sense of how the superintendent is doing in her job, and especially with these current circumstances on top of it all, I think that it would help develop a much better relationship, because all too often, in my experience, it's been very adversarial, and it's adversarial because no one from the school ever comes to the Board of Selectmen to let them know what's going on. And I cannot recall that ever happening, and I find that distressing.
or the reverse too. Yes, selectmen have rarely shown to the school committee. All right, so we got that project. That's an ongoing thing. We'll work into the new year.
Thank you.
Right, and I believe there's one more item tonight.
Oh, yeah, I think there is.
Yes, so Tom has, I should say, resurrected the previous FY 19-20 goals and priority projects. So obviously, this kind of got downsized in priority when the pandemic hit back in the June time period. But certainly the Board of Selectmen need to catch up on what was planned to be done in 20, and also used as a footprint for going ahead in 21 and our upcoming 22 budget. So over to you, Tom, if you'd like to just briefly describe what you found.
We had approximately about, as of April 12th, 2019, oh, there we are. It was about approximately 26, 27 various projects, goals listed here. A number of them have been completed. I've been putting them on, tracking them on, let's say, an Excel worksheet, and placing where we are for each step. And hopefully we'll be updating those every 2 weeks. But the board had some larger goals listed. Everything from recodification, which I know has been worked on, Affordable Housing Trust, joint agreements with the community. And some of those are going to take a little longer. I'm going to try to put those together regarding our projects. But the key is keeping them on track and moving. And right now, obviously, we're in the budget season. We're in a pandemic situation. But a lot of those, I think, were already completed by our department heads. And the key is right now is just making sure it gets back to the board and saying, this has been done. I mean, I think you'd be surprised at the number of items that it appears that they've done in the past year and a half. And so planning on reporting that back to the board, hopefully some of those before the end of the year.
Now, who has accomplished these projects?
Well, there's a number, I would have to follow through, but there's items here that I know have been done or close to it. You know, the Iron Rail Cell Tower RFP, the RFP's been completed.
There we go.
Okay, but the RFP's been completed. We just finished up our steps on the senior affordable housing project you just approved. We also,
Okay.
yeah, there's just items here, the GFOA
Okay.
budget that you received the award on last year. These are things, the budget forecasting. There's a number of these items here, the community residence survey.
Mhm.
So these are done. It's just, a lot of the key is getting that to you to know what
Yep.
we've accomplished.
So we
and
know
what
what's been
haven't
done, what's been
accomplished,
done,
next
and
steps. Yeah.
how effective was it? Did we waste our time, or did we accomplish something? Let me ask you a question now that you've got this subject sort of open. A proposal that I made to your predecessor was that for years we had selectmen retreats, and he thought that was great. Well, nothing ever came of it. I think it's very, very important to have that think tank experience where you're informal, you're not formal. You throw out ideas and you discuss some of the issues that you're talking about here and report that, oh, here's what we have done. Oh, that's great. But there's many other concepts and projects that could be discussed and thought about if we had something like a selectmen's retreat. Are you familiar with those?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
And they're sometimes they're structured, sometimes not, as you were saying. But basically what comes out of that is you try to reach some consensus on short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals.
Yep.
Now, short-term goal, let's just say, I'm looking out my window right now, let's say a short-term goal would be parking lot repair of town hall. We don't, need it, but that's something that can be accomplished. Long-term goal would be master planning, developing a master plan, developing an open space and recreation plan. Medium goal could take a couple of years of, let's say you wanted to fund, even though it would take town meeting, funding a more full-time fire department, where you would have to fund, a firefighter once a year for 4 or 5 years. I mean, I'm just throwing ideas out, which would be short, medium, and long-term goals. And then once you create that, and it's like I've always said about doing planning, it's great to have the plans, don't just leave them up in the bookcase. And is to follow up on the goals and where we are in our timetable.
Well, that's why every retreat can be refreshed in 2 months, 6 months, whatever is a reasonable time frame, so that things, as you say, a plan doesn't get put on the shelf and collect a bunch of dust. And 10 years later, whatever happened to that? So that's fine. I fully agree with you. Thank you.
And I would fully, depending upon how our situation develops in the next few months about meeting and such, we can make a determination about doing, but it is successful. It is successful, and everyone needs to be open. Everyone has their different interests and, and needs, and we respect all that, and we try to come up together with some type of plan going forward.
Good. Thank you.
All right, so we've got quite a few management type initiatives started here, so we'll proceed with those. Looking at the schedule going forward here, is I think the expressed from the staff was if we absolutely need one, that 29th of December would be a okay day for next Board of Selectmen's meeting, or do we want to roll to the 5th of January? Any input there, Tom?
Let me pull up the calendar.
What day of the week is the 29th, if I might?
It's the Tuesday.
Tuesday? Huh.
It might be, we may be on a shorter staff. If the board is fine, we could do it the first week of January.
All right. So John, what do you think? That's the 5th of January is the first Tuesday.
Okay. Yeah, either way is fine with me.
All right. So unless some sort of emergency situation comes up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jackie.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, Tom, I just didn't want you to forget that January 5th, we're looking to do jointly with Hamilton as a follow-up from last month's joint Board of Selectmen meetings. We also have the library contract for the two boards together for January 5th. I just wanted that to remind you.
Yeah, certainly the first meeting of the new year, I would expect to be fairly busy, knowing too that the 9th of January is the big budget review too, that Saturday, correct? So otherwise, let's plan right now, unless Tom comes up with something urgent, that the next Board of Selectmen meeting will be on Tuesday, the 5th of January. And at that meeting, we definitely, Jackie, we want to get the cell tower moving forward. So that'll give John and you some time to get all the questions answered. And
yes.
They'll give Tom and myself some time to kind of flesh out what the management information will look like going forward and have that more on paper. Okay. All right.
Yeah, good.
All right. So anything else tonight, John?
I'm all set, sir. Thank you very much. You want me to make a motion to adjourn?
Well, I just had a couple of comments first.
Oh, please, go
So
ahead.
we've got possible snow emergency coming up tomorrow night. So really, we had a little snow earlier, but folks, let's be careful and clear the roads and so forth and let the DPW do their work. Second, we didn't have Mary Beth on. She's been working so hard on this, and hopefully you saw the Board of Health forum on Monday. But rates have quadrupled in Massachusetts over the last 6 weeks. So now is not the time to kind of be lax. So let's be very protective of each other, wear the mask everywhere, and take all the precautions so that we can get through this pandemic. And hopefully shortly we'll be on the list to get the vaccines. Tom, anything last item?
No, I just want to wish everybody a happy holiday season, and just, be careful. And I agree with the chair's statement. So please do.
All right. Well, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I do have one more concern. It just crossed my mind. Depending on how bad this storm is, the Wreaths Across America is this weekend.
Yeah. So that
Is there a backup plan of some sort, which I'm not familiar with yet?
The plan is 19th as it's a nationwide activity. And
Yes.
so I think unless it's really, really deep snow, let's leave that up to Dean Peterson and Bill Wilson to make that. And volunteers will all be listed, and they'll be contacted by email Friday as to updates and so forth. So hopefully, have volunteers for that, as we talked about before.
I should have known everybody has a backup plan, especially if wind dodge is involved.
Yeah, I'll entertain your motion to adjourn then, John.
I so moved.
All right. Seconded. Roll call vote. John?
Aye.
And Gary, aye. So thank you. Happy holidays to everybody, and a special thanks to the town administrator and the whole staff in town hall and departments that have worked so hard this year through this pandemic and a challenging situation. So thank you very much, and let's wrap this up on a very safe note for the next 2 weeks.
Yep, and let's hope that next year is going to be a much better year.
All right, thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.